Yo, what is up guys, and welcome back to the Tips and Tricks series, this time for BARD support, one of the most versatile and powerful roaming supports in the game. This one is a long one, as you can see, because when it comes to little tricks and different ways you can use BARD's abilities, there are so many it is hard to count. So many, in fact, that I had to do Harry, my editor, a favor and cut the tips down to avoid making him work till the end of the year on this video. And thanks for all the support on the Tips and Tricks series. You guys have been loving it so far, so drop a comment down below for the next champion and I'll get on that. Oh, and since I kept writing Brad instead of BARD in my script by accident, we're henceforth going to refer to our boy as Brad. So Brad's Q is integral to his kit. If you use it well, you will likely be the support that the enemy team complains about when they say support is the most broken role in the game. And if you use it badly, well, let's just say you might as well have chosen the cannon minion as your champion, because in the early game, this ability is the key to winning trades and skirmishes. So let's go over some tips for Brad's Q. Brad Q has a very intricate and skill expressive hitbox. You can follow flashes, hit people perpendicular to your original target, and more. The next tip is you can Q flash on Brad. Also, like I showed on Pyke and other champs, you can change the direction of Q using geometry. This is why your teachers told you maths would be useful later in life. Brad Q has some really interesting interactions with spell shields. For example, Sivir's shield. If I Q Sivir and she shields the first hit, then she won't get stunned, but the Q keeps going. If the second part hits an enemy, then only the second enemy gets stunned. But if it hits a wall, then Sivir will get stunned. If Sivir is standing behind someone and spell shields the second part of your Q, then the first target still gets stunned. And if you spell shield in the middle of the Q, in between hitting the first and the second targets, Sivir will still get stunned. And the stun is still applied even if the first or the second target dies from the hit. Brad ult separates the good Brads from the bad Brads. Normally, most champs don't let you actively sabotage your team mid-fight, but with Brad, you can single-handedly win or lose your team to fight by using your ultimate. So let's go over some tips for his R. Brad ulti works on literally everything. Anything that is targetable, allied champs, enemy champs, minions, monsters, plants, epic monsters, and even turrets. This makes it one of the most versatile abilities in the game. Keep in mind, you cannot use it on turrets that are not damageable. Brad ulti is not affected by tenacity. That means that the stasis duration is fixed no matter what items or champions get hit by it. Although spell shields like Sivir's can and will eat the ulti. Also, unstoppable champs like Malphite during his ult or Vi during her ult will not be affected. And once hit by stasis, the targets will not be able to cleanse or QSS it. This makes Brad's R a devastating tool for dealing with AD carries who run cleanse. Oh, by the way, if you're enjoying this tips and tricks video, be sure to subscribe for the next one that's coming out in the series. Brad R has a variable travel time. That means the closer you are, the less time it takes to hit the ground. This is why most good Brad players have a minimum range that they will cast it from, and also why it probably feels insanely hard to hit from mid to long range. The travel time to hit the target varies from about 0.65 seconds to 1.8 seconds at max range. That is almost double the time. And it is really important to remember that Brad R will draw aggro, as it counts as a 0 damage hit. This means it'll draw tower aggro, minion aggro, and pop runes or items that would normally proc on hit. Although the enemies will be in stasis, so they won't take damage. But for some reason, Elixir of Sorcery applies before the stasis. Don't ask me why. Brad's passive is just like his ultimate. It is a double-edged sword. It can power you up and give you huge roaming and an experience lead, or it can bait you into leaving your poor AD carry all alone to get dove under tower. So let's talk about how to get better at using it. First, just so everyone is on the same page, Brad gets experience, mana, and move speed for every single chime. And after picking up 5 chimes, he powers up his passive auto attack. And just keep in mind, it is 12% maximum mana, which means it doesn't matter what mana you are at. If you pick up a chime, you will always get the same amount. Secondly, it is important during the early game to remember where your chimes spawn, as their spawn location is based on where you're standing at that point in time. Because Riot Games likes you doing maths, they made the chimes spawn every 50 seconds. So that means at 50 seconds in the game, if you want your chimes to spawn near bot lane, you should be around bot lane. But there's also more, as there always is with Brad. Chimes will never spawn in the enemy base, nor will they spawn in the enemy jungle in the first 5 minutes of the game. So you won't have to go invading just to get your experience and mana in the early game. Oh, and of course there's more. So the second and the third spawns of your chimes at 140 and 230 only spawn 1 chime. And the chimes turn red when there's 1 minute left on them to pick them up before they disappear. All right, I think we could finally move on. Brad's passive stacks runes, and that is why you'll often see Brad's run things like Electrocute. The trading pattern generally is like Q passive auto or vice versa, as his passive auto attack gives you 2 stacks of that rune. Brad's passive auto attack gets eaten by spell shields, but if you auto champions like Jax when they're dodging, the basic attack damage will be dodged. However, the meep damage from your passive will not. This can be pretty handy if you still need to deal damage to them while they're dodging you. Let's talk breakpoints. So Brad's passive really powers up at 5, 15, and 35 chimes, where you get a 25% slow, splash damage in a cone, and a larger cone AoE respectively. And at 100 chimes, Brad gains all the effects of the meeps, and further chimes simply give flat 14 damage every 5 you pick up. The reason 15 chimes is so useful is Brad can then help push waves really quickly with his AD carry, using a couple of auto attacks to basically demolish the wave. And it's also easy to harass enemies through minions. Don't sleep on this upgrade, it is really huge. Now for some really quick tips about Brad's W, Caretaker's Shrine. I have often used this ability to proc things like Guardian on allies when you're far away from them. It can be a really useful panic button to help allies in a pinch. Likewise, Brad's W should not only be used for healing in lane or left to charge up. You get a flat 30% move speed bonus that does not scale with the charge time. So if the goal is to get a teammate out of danger, then dropping a W directly on their face is usually a good idea. And finally, leveling up W also levels up the currently existing shrines on the map. And here we have another insanely deep skill expressive ability, Magical Journey. So if you've not realized this by now, Brad has a ludicrous amount of big brain stuff that you can do with his kit. So let's go over some more tips for Brad's E. Let's start with the thickest walls that you can E through. The most common is this wall when running back to bot lane. And something I learned from researching this video is that there's also a max range on Brad's tunnel, and it's about 2 screens long. Then you can also tunnel through walls like this chunky tri-brush wall near bot lane, or skimming across the top of Krugs here, also around the alcove here. And another one that I like is this mid lane tunnel to gank mid from afar. Just experiment. And if you get lucky, you'll experience the legendary 1 centimeter portal. Truly breathtaking. You can't take Brad's tunnel if you're grounded. However, you can cast it while grounded or rooted. And also, it's quite a powerful ability and it counts as a dash. That means there are only 2 ways to knock a champion out of the tunnel while they're traveling: displacement or stasis. So you can face tank stuns while sipping a drink on your magical journey. This is a big reason why Brad is considered such a slippery champion. Flashing into the tunnel cancels the animation, allowing you to escape faster. Perhaps the funniest way to use Brad's E is to fake out enemies. Placing the E and then watching the enemies sail away as you run the other way is a solid way to gain mental advantage. And even more sick is when you predict an enemy is going to click near a wall and you place the portal right where they click to yeet them out of your life. Sometimes the least expected journey is the most magical. So by this point the video is super long and I've gone through a lot of the finer details of Brad's kit, so I'm going to leave you with some quick general tips for Brad which will hopefully let you understand this really unique champion a bit better. Number 1 is when to pick chimes up. It's really easy to just bail on your AD carry and run around on a little journey picking up chimes, but rarely is it a good idea to just flat out abandon them. This is why Brad is such a double-edged sword. If you time your roams correctly when your AD carry won't miss much farm, you can dominate the map. But if you sacrifice the AD carry's farm too much, well, things might not be so easy when you return back to bot lane. Secondly, using chimes and Brad's mobility with E and W to speed yourself around the map makes a very hard champion to keep up with. This means you can cross huge distances which most enemy supports will not be able to in the same amount of time, allowing you to pull off ganks, help push lanes, or invade the jungle and still get back in time to help your AD carry farm. So think of yourself as a wave, ebbing and flowing in and out of lanes, smoothly transitioning from mid to bot to jungle, etc. If you time this right, it is almost impossible to know where Brad will show up next. And finally, learning Brad can be very difficult because he's such a flexible champ. Should I have roamed there? Should I have ulted in this situation or held it for something else? Could I have ganked top or mid more often in this game? To answer these questions, you could play 10k games of Brad, but an easier way would be to go check out streams of players who have already done that heavy lifting for you. And for Brad, the best streamer and educator I know is Leagueoflegends. So go check his stream out, I've linked it down below. Keep an eye on where he roams to and why he's spending time where he is, and you'll climb way faster for sure. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out my Pike tips and tricks video as well. And remember to subscribe to the channel. Good luck in solo queue and I'll see you soon.